Everybody, thanks for joining us. Today is January 15th. It's Wednesday. It's 5:30. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board, and we're going to start by saying the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Randy.
Trustee Winslow.
Present.
Trustee Kidda.
Here.
Trustee Leighton.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Treasurer Rickower.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Kangas and our attorney Roger Zappa. Staff present again is on Zoom. We have our Superintendent of Public Works, Lenny Bodinas, and our Fire Chief, Dan Shanahan is here, and our Planner, Zoning Administrator, Jason McCarthy is here. And committee member is here is Rob Sved from the DDA.
Okay, thank you for that, Randy. Anybody wish to address the board before we get started? Okay, thank you. We need approval of the consent agenda, which tonight consists of approval of regular meeting minutes of January 2nd, 2025, and work session minutes of January 6th. We have bills payable in the amount of $381,010.53. Reports that were included is the Housing Now, which is the group that started the total market analysis. You might remember, I just want to make sure there's lots of acronyms floating around. So I put that update in for you, and the solid waste abbreviated packet for tonight, and the sheriff's report from December of 24. We've got financial statements in also from December of 24.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We just need approval of the remainder unless there are changes.
Approve that.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, let's start with our fire chief with his report, please.
I'll be brief. Good evening. I'll just start off with our run numbers. They were fairly consistent with the previous years. We were down by 7. Year to date, we ended up with 655, and then last year 662, so pretty consistent. Again, most of it, I mean, we're pretty low nationally, average-wise. Only 73% of our calls being EMS, compared to national average is closer to 80, 82. What else did we do last month? Last month, again, fairly, I just say uneventful. I guess that word seems to be working out pretty well. Nothing out of the ordinary. Training this month, though, like I spoke last month, I did say we're going to try and train with other departments a little more this year. We're starting off January. We're going to be training with Marquette Township Fire, with Rapid Task Force, and our Rapid Intervention Crew. That'll be at our hall next week. Smoke, as every December is, smoke detector installs. We did 7 homes in the month of December. Also, our inspections, fortunately, have been up a little bit the last couple of months. As I told you last month, the AFG grant was applied for and has been submitted, and that is going to be, again, the hose, fire nozzles, and a fit tester. Apparatus is all in good condition, except for one of the ambulances. We have a head gasket issue with it. And speaking of the ambulance, we're probably, I found this out last week, probably not going to receive it. I was told January, and now it's May. Yeah, May B is what I say. I'm hoping. Old 77 is still for sale if anybody's interested. We have one semi-serious person with a semi-reasonable offer. We'll probably we might be putting it back on the auction here shortly. It's off the auction right now, it only goes in 2-week blocks. The guys did participate in the Cops versus Firefighter Ring the Bell Challenge at Super Bowl Foods. Assistant Chief Gregory's put on the annual Christmas party for the members' children. That was at our hall. And I just wanted to let everybody be aware, the Veterans Home, I did run the numbers, I did get the numbers for how many times EMS was called to the Veterans Home. It was 187 calls they had last year in 2024. And we're currently at 655-ish, we've been averaging, so that's a healthy jump. Yeah, I just got that number the other day. So just to give you a heads up what's coming. Yeah. Any questions on anything? No. All right, everybody have fun. All right, have a good night.
Thanks for coming, Dan.
I don't know how you got out of here so quick.
I know this.
You're not gonna be so lucky, Dan, so just buckle down. All right, Public Works, Lenny, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, not a problem. So we'll start with wastewater. In the last couple of weeks here, we had 2 leaks on our grinder tanks. The fitting right at the tank broke, and we had to dig them up and repair them. We're thinking it was has something to do with the weather. There wasn't a lot of snow on the ground, and then we had all that rain, and then it got cold again, so it kind of sheared off the fitting. All in all, they're not too bad. The dig up, both of them were very quick and easy repair. So if we have brakes, those are definitely the type that we want. We also got the new Center Street pumps. They're both installed and they're working well. We don't have any problems noted, so we're gonna keep our fingers crossed and hope that they keep working here for a long time into the future. We've been doing manholes, checking manholes as time has permitted, and we've also been cleaning the sewer meter flume, partial flume that's right by the Villa Capri. So that's kind of a routine maintenance type item. One thing I also had on here for wastewater that I didn't put down is we did have a leak at one of our air reliefs on Wright Street. So the crew had seen that it was leaking. They were able to get it out there, get it under control fairly fast. That's going to be kind of a little bit of a project here as we go forward into the spring. We got to figure out what we're going to do. All the valves that are on the air relief itself are corroded and rusted. We can't get it shut, and we don't have any isolation valves. So we're going to have to put our heads together and do a little bit of planning, and it might turn into kind of a big project, but I think we'll be able to get it done. Once we get the plan together, we'll be able to get it done fairly fast. For water, routine well house duties and samples. Everything's been going pretty good out there. I just found out, I think it was today or yesterday, we did have one of our heaters went in there, so we're kind of pricing out a new heater and seeing what maybe alternatives that we could do for different types of heat out the well house. Right now they're all electric, which means they really like to suck up the power. So we're kind of maybe going to do some investigating if it's worthwhile, maybe even doing propane or something out there. Maybe it'd be cheaper in the long run as far as electrical costs. Propane might be cheaper, but we'll run a cost analysis on that probably within the next week or two. Manager Kangas and I, we had a meeting with Fishbeck, and we went over the data for the Northwoods pump station upgrades. They're almost complete with that study. So that was one of the 3 studies that we had. If we do purchase into the water plant, we do upgrade Cox, and then we would possibly pump city water to the whole system. So if we do that, we'll have to make sure Northwoods is upgraded too. So this is kind of the first step in that, seeing what we actually need to do, what kind of, if we have to replace the pumps, if we have to get a whole different style of pumps, any kind of piping. So that's kind of what this study is about. They're almost done, and we'll have a final report hopefully within the next few months and to show the board. We've been investigating resolving meter issues as they come up. So some of our big meters, they have a 10-year life cycle, and they are starting to kind of go. So as we start losing numbers on the automatic reads on those, we'll have to go through, and we're starting to replace the heads on those. And we're also going to be planning for the small meters as they go, because they supposedly have a 20-year life cycle. We're still quite a ways away from starting to hit that, but we'll have to start doing some planning. But for the bigger meters, for sure. So they have a 10-year warranty on them, and I think I've mentioned it before. They're failing at 10 years and 3 months. So we don't get much more than 10 years out of that. So we're kind of constantly going through and looking at those and making a note of what has to be replaced. For building and grounds, we have the routine cleaning and maintenance on the various township buildings and facilities. They've been busy out plowing the sidewalks and plowing, everything, the parking lots and everything else that needs to be plowed as it comes up. The ice rink is now open, so I know a lot of people really wait for that to open. With this cold weather that we've had, been able to make ice fairly quickly. We evaluate it every day for safety, and we're trying to put water on it every day just to kind of keep it smooth and skatable. One issue that we do have is our Zamboni broke down. So we're kind of working on that. Chad's looking at it to see maybe if he can figure out what the problem is. He thinks the regulator is bad, and so hopefully we'll have that back up and running fairly quickly. So right now, what they got to do is they got to do it the old-fashioned way. They're out there scraping it down with shovels and then getting water on it. One issue that we did have too was the lights were on a little bit longer than what they were supposed to be. So we went over there and we checked the timer and reset it back to 9 o'clock. And hopefully they're shutting off. There's nobody around at 9 o'clock, so if you hear out in the public, if they're not shutting off when they're supposed to be, definitely let me know and we'll go there and make some more adjustments on it. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Lenny? Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And thanks.
Okay, Jason for planning. Thanks
Good
for
evening.
coming in.
In no particular order, it's no secret that Aldi has been looking in our area, and I've been working with a broker for the last 6 months on probably 10 different sites that we're running different scenarios on. So that's in progress. I think that's an exciting project. They have a great prototype of their building, and they don't take up too much space, and I think it's going to be a nice blend in our community. So stay tuned on that. Regarding the veterans facility, I haven't heard too much on that as of yet. I suspect that they're working on finalizing their site plan and things of that nature, and that we'll see something later on in the winter. As you know, Leanne Kashmarsky was appointed to the Planning Commission, or I should say reappointed, because she was a Planning Commissioner previously. So that's exciting, and I'll work with the Planning Commission to get some sort of recognition for Steve Hakenen's service to the community. He was on the ZBA when I started in 2011, so I imagine he has served the community for quite some time. Been working with a gentleman named Jim Conlon, and he represents Bruce Basola's property where the Jasmine restaurant was, that kind of menagerie of buildings there, on a redevelopment of that site. The latest iteration includes a mix of residential and commercial, so that's exciting. Let's see, we recently purchased our 2025 parcel layer from equalization. That's always an exciting time of year when you get a new parcel layer, so all the land divisions and boundary adjustments that have occurred throughout 2024 are now reflected on our map. So if any time you guys have any questions on where parcel lines are, we can assist you with that. It's also helpful just for day-to-day business with residents. As you know, we're in the middle of the master plan update. In fact, we have a steering committee meeting tonight at 6:30. I thought it was at 5:30. I was sitting there wondering why nobody was here. And we'll be going over, hopefully, a final section of goals and objectives. So goals and objectives with regard to housing, transportation, community services and facilities, stormwater, business development. There's a myriad of them. So we already have them, but now we're just updating them a little bit. One thing I would like to see more of is, instead of having buffer yards or buffers between businesses that stipulate how many trees and bushes you need to plant between them, depending upon the varying land use types that we actually have some hard numbers on. If you have this much impervious surface, you shall plant this many trees and bushes. So this is something that came from, well, it's implemented everywhere except for here apparently, but something I've been keen on. I know everybody kind of complains and says, oh, Jason, why do we have to put those curbing islands in? We got to plow in the winter. Well, green space is green space and you should maintain it. There's plenty of examples of good green space in commercial development in the township, so we just want to make sure that that carries through to each development. So be working on a goal and an objective for that, or an objective, and then hopefully making some amendments to the zoning ordinance to kind of bring that up to where it should be. We got a call from Ontonagon Township. They wanted to know who wrote our Mission grant application and wanted some information on that because I think they're attempting to get that same housing grant that we received. So we sent them over that information. It's always nice to get calls from neighboring communities. The Renovare Development LLC Plan Unit Development was approved by the Planning Commission. I know that you guys will be deliberating now on numbers and brownfield calculations and the like. But from a planning perspective, let alone or set aside for the PUD agreement, that project is through the Planning Commission, so now it's basically in your hands. We received, it's funny, everybody's talking about housing, and we have some housing going on. Between the Renovare project, we recently received a special use application for a duplex in Trowbridge Park. So Trowbridge Park does allow duplexes by special use permit. This one is proposed to be at the end of Warner, or close down at the end of Warner, on a vacant parcel. We've been working with Phil and Lee's Homes out of Escanaba. They have a prototype of side-by-side single-story manufactured product. It's very nice looking. So that'll be going before the Planning Commission to schedule a public hearing next week. So we hope the public hearing will be the first week in February on that. And then further, with regard to the Planning Commission activities, we did elect the chair, vice chair, and secretary, and they have remained the same. So Jim Johnson will be your Planning Commission chairperson. Denny Farrar will be the vice chair. No?
Bethany.
Bethany's vice? Oh, okay. And Denny is the secretary? Oh, so they swapped. Okay.
They did.
Interesting. I was asking Eric, and he thought that they remained the same. He was probably taking notes. We're also working on our Marquette Township blight and property maintenance ordinance, so that's really close to being done. We just had a few tweaks to make at the Planning Commission level. They want to see some more teeth in junk vehicles and what constitutes a junk vehicle, things of that nature, and then how many can be on a property. So corresponding with Attorney Zappa today, and we'll get something back to the Planning Commission for next week. And then I'm also meeting with, this one's a little bit more low-key at the moment, but a 40 to 50 unit multifamily workforce housing apartment complex in the township tomorrow at 3:30. And then finally, we have a new board. Congratulations. And if you need a board photo at some point in the future, let me know. Any questions for me?
Lots, eh? Dan?
I just have one question. When it comes, new development and like this Aldi's or any other box stores, so I suppose there is no way that we can draw up an agreement with them that they would not try to go through the...
Yeah, be careful with that one. There's intergovernmental agreements. Roger could probably speak to those. But it's a constitutional right for everybody to take advantage of that provision or that loophole, if you will. There's MOUs. I know Meyer came in and said that they weren't going to. The folks that developed the shops at Marquette, Lowe's, TJ Maxx, PetSmart, Ulta, Shoe, something. Those folks they developed locally here, constructed locally, and they have not challenged that. But some of the other, most of the other major entities have, and it's a little bit out of my bailiwick as a planner, but it's a good question, and it's something that would be set by your body instead of the planning commission.
Well, I was just thinking, if there's some way that we can do with new development, I know there's nothing we're gonna do with the old ones, but, and even if they say it, let's put it in writing.
Yeah, I've seen some examples, and I think I've shared this candidly with Attorney Zappa, in California where, they're making site plans $200,000, $50,000 to get through planning. Ethically, is that, a viable option here? Probably not. But it's gonna still take a legislative fix.
That's what the MTA attorneys have said too.
Yeah, it's really the only way.
Any other questions?
You could limit big box development to 50,000 square feet and start working on research and development, high-tech industry, instead of, large store box retailers that are here for 10 years. And that's something that we've been talking about in the master plan, is just diversifying our portfolio a little bit from being this, entertainment and retail district into being something that maybe is more relevant long-term as a hub. So it's in the back of our mind, but yeah, as far as exacting.
Outside the box.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Way outside, yeah.
Big box.
But as far as exacting things from developers and entering into contracts that are binding, that would be you guys and the attorney.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good meeting.
Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Zappa.
Well, it's been a fairly busy month on my desk also. I had reported last month that we had the oral arguments on the appeal from the Zoning Board of Appeals to the Circuit Court. We prevailed on that, but we were waiting for the judge's order. That did arrive. So that starts the ticking of the time for an appeal. And I did receive a request for an order of the transcript, which generally means that an appeal will probably be filed. I looked at some documents from Crown Castle and AT&T, who rent space have the monopole at the Cox Water Tank property. They're going to be looking at updating some of their equipment, and we charge them rent, of course, and we're trying to determine what exactly the changes entail there, because depending on whether it's strictly an update of obsolete equipment versus new equipment, it may affect the amount of rent we're entitled to. And the blight and property maintenance ordinance revisions, I got those this morning. That triggered a few additional things that will have to happen in that, and I've drafted those today. So those should be going out probably in the next 2 days back to the zoning administrator and planning commission to look at, primarily in the field of junk vehicles, in terms of if you're going to add licensing and insurance topics, it greatly affects some other areas within the ordinance. There's a question on ballot drop boxes that took a quick look at. We had another question affecting final adoption of the fire department policies. And I attended the Brownfield tax incremental financing meeting on, I think it was January 6th. And I'm probably overlooking a thing or two, but those are some, there was one a couple of questions from the assistant treasurer. One relating to taxation of structures or buildings on leased land. And I have the answer, but she doesn't yet. So those are some of the issues, at least, that have crossed my desk. Yes, and I did get an email regarding a question on the DDA at about, I think, 4:30. that I've read, and that's it.
Sounds good. Any questions for the attorney? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, believe it or not, I don't have anything in community Lincoln. I don't know what the deal is. I must not have made enough notes this week. Are you hearing anything? Anything we need to know about the public?
Just hearing more about blight and then recently about the Genovari development. Concerns with brownfield and how that could affect residents.
Interesting. We might talk about Reservoir. We were just talking about that today, but we should probably put that on the agenda and have the conversation now that we have more information from the work session. It's going to come to us eventually to approve or disapprove, or they may ask for an extension if they're not finished by April 10th. So it's too bad we didn't have enough information when we started that we could, be up to speed. But so many of these things have changed, and the work session was extremely not well done as far as providing information. So we might look at that for the first February meeting. Just have a conversation at a time. John?
Since we conversed this afternoon, I had another thought that hadn't crossed my mind until I was driving home and trying to keep myself occupied. One of the things you may consider is what's the maximum length of a TIF agreement you would be willing to consider. I think they're considering a 30-year TIF, which seems like an awfully long time, plus the 5 years on the end for the land bank. Are you comfortable with that? If not, what duration are you comfortable with? Or are you comfortable with any duration? It's a new tool in the toolbox, and this is the first time you've had to consider something like this. I'm not even at a point yet where I can confidently make a recommendation to you, but it's certainly something that we should discuss more.
And the question of the 5-year turnaround too, because one of the first questions from the planning commission when they heard about the plan, the initial, was okay, so we give all these people subsidies and they can move in and buy these houses. So what's going to prevent them from flipping it in a year and making double their money or something? So at the work session, the statement was made there that it's typical, or they had at least assumed we would agree to 5 years. So that's another thing that we need to have the conversation about. Is 5 years okay?
I think that's what they were
10
proposing,
Yeah,
was 5 years.
yeah, or 8 or 20 or whatever. So that's another thing for you to think about. And if you want Ann back again, or somebody, I can ask something like that. So we'll see.
And if you said for the entire duration of that 30 years that the house couldn't be flipped, will they ever sell them? And that would guarantee also a 30-year payback to the TIF district. So, I mean, if it gets flipped every 5 years and reassessed because of the new ownership, maybe it does get paid back quicker. So there's a lot of things to consider. It's a fairly complicated situation. And like I said, a new tool in the toolbox. There was never an option until last year for a residential TIF district.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that we don't have them, we just don't have them with 30-year durations.
Okay, so we'll think about that. Do some research maybe, or if you've got questions, check with John. I know some, but we don't want to kibitz between us anymore. Anything else you're hearing? So blight and Reservoir, okay. Okay, let's move on then to consider an engagement letter with Miller Canfield. This is on the township facility loans refinancing.
And this would be the prerequisite for the next item on the agenda. If you don't want to engage with Miller Canfield, then we have no bond counsel to help us with the next item. So my recommendation would be to accept that letter and agree to Miller Canfield as our bond counsel for this first round of bonds, which is facilities refinancing, basically.
So moved.
Support.
Who supported that, Andrew?
Yeah.
Okay.
And as a point of clarification for transparency's sake, the fee is covered through the bond proceeds. So it's all part of the refinancing.
Well, just a comment I have, Len, I think it's a good thing because we're gonna refinance the buildings and we're going to, if this is approved, and we're gonna save a lot of money in the process, so I think it's kind of a no-brainer.
Tens of thousands of dollars. It's really a benefit to the taxpayers for sure.
So explain how we're going to save a lot of money, because people want to know that.
Yeah.
I did notice the interest rate was lower. And what other
It's
benefits,
actually a little bit higher on the Public Works building.
but not on the other
Collectively,
ones?
And it's also, the bank is waiving early termination fees on the mortgages.
Which
That's
means
significant.
that we could pay them off early if someone gave us a lot of money.
Also, the facilities will not be held as collateral because it won't be a traditional mortgage anymore. And that's really the first step we need to do for the next round of bonding, assuming that the city is on board with us purchasing a portion of the water treatment plant. This has to be the first step.
Plus, we're getting away from the 7-year balloon that we kind of got into, didn't know about at the time. So that's good. And the proposals are 7 and 10 years, or 6 and 10 years or something. I think we're looking at 10, but that'll be,
It was 7 or 10, and 10 presents the most balanced, sustainable annual payments.
John, is the interest rate on the Public Works building higher because it's an older building?
It was last refinanced when the interest rates were significantly lower. It's about a 1.5 higher now, but overall, I believe that interest rate is actually a little bit more beneficial when you combine the two.
yeah, it's like 3.5 and 5.2 or something on the two buildings, and it comes out to 4.6, I think.
Close, yep.
Something close to those numbers. Okay, any other questions?
So this does not have to go out on bids? We just use this person because they've been our bond authority all along? I mean, I don't,
They have been our bond counsel in the past,
in the
correct?
past?
Yep.
Okay.
And Tom's online if anybody's got questions on how this works. Good evening, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, good evening. I didn't want to speak until any action was taken, but I'm happy to address any questions with respect to our engagement, or, of course, with the next action item, if that's taken with respect to, the structure and some of the questions that have been raised at the meeting.
I would recommend calling the question on the engagement letter and then proceeding to the resolution.
Okay. Sounds good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right. Consider resolution authorizing issuance of 2025 refunding bonds on the township facilities.
I said refinancing, it's refunding.
Refunding, yeah, I corrected myself.
But refinancing makes more sense in my head. I'm an engineer,
Yeah.
not an attorney.
Okay, yeah, so here's this was at our place when we sat down tonight. Some of the numbers, 4.8 on 2.215.
Yeah, so I'm happy to kind of walk through the resolution, if that makes sense, just hit some of the highlights of what it authorizes and what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that'd be good, Tom, thank you.
Great. So again, it's indicated, the idea here is to refinance the two existing notes, really, that the township has with the bank in connection with the Township Hall, Fire Hall, and DPW facility. Those were done at different times, so that's why the interest rates are different. The latest one was done in 2020, one in 2023, with rates of 5.7 and 3% respectively. What's being proposed, again, each of those had balloon maturities, right? So there would be a debt service that would be paid, and then there would be a large balloon payment due at the end of each of those terms, with the idea, presumably, of refinancing them at that time and continuing out the payment for a longer period of time. So the idea here is to take them out now. The main reason really was indicated by John was there's mortgages on these existing facilities, and we really don't want to have a mortgage on any of the township's municipal assets. So the idea would be to refinance these and put in their place, they're refunding bonds, but the sole security is a pledge of the general fund. So these would be limited tax general obligation bonds, and the only security is the limited tax pledge of the township. So from the bank's perspective, they're getting a pledge of the general fund, which is a very common municipal type of security, as opposed to granting security interest in any type of, whether it be equipment or property of the municipality. So this resolution authorizes one series of bonds, of refunding bonds, in the amount of $2,215,000 to refinance those two existing obligations to Incredible Bank. Now, the bank is willing to buy these bonds, so really kind of swap obligations with different securities, so they're comfortable with the security of the township's general fund in that circumstance. And what it does put into place is a more level debt service to final maturity. So if you look at the numbers, and then the rate that they're proposing is 4.8%, after the first year payments, the debt service is relatively the same at about $290,000 annually. It fluctuates up to $297,000, but it's between $290,000 and $297,000 for the final maturity of the bonds, which would be October 1 of 2034. So you're really putting in a fixed rate to maturity transaction that goes out 10 years. And in addition, one of the questions was the ability to refinance these, and you can, as part of the term sheet that's included as part of the resolution, the township could, after, beginning in the year 2030, so any of those maturities 2030 through thereon can be refinanced or paid off. So to the extent the township has funds available that it wants to utilize to pay down the debt, it could do so, or it could look at refinancing this at a lower interest rate if the interest rate environment provided for that, and if it made sense, right? So there's costs associated with doing a refinancing, and so to the extent that it made sense financially to do so, you could consider that at that time, or just decide to repay it if you want to from whatever funds that the township has available to do so. So the refunding bond issue would have that as a provision where the township could refinance it after 5 years. The resolution, again, authorizes issuance of those bonds. It provides for the security for the bonds. It provides the form of the bonds, and filing any documentation with the Michigan Department of Treasury, which we would assist as bond counsel, and filing documentation with the Internal Revenue Service, because again, these are tax exempt bonds. So we would prepare all the documentation, including the resolution that's in front of you, all the closing documents. We would give an opinion at closing to the township that the bonds are legal, valid, and binding obligations of the township, and exempt from federal and state income tax. And then that is relied upon by Incredible Bank to provide the tax exempt rate that they're providing in their term sheet. The anticipated closing date is February 25th. So if approved, we'd move to submitting documentation to the Michigan Department of Treasury, and then we would look to get the deal closed by February 25th. Happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Great summation. John?
The only other thing I'd like to point out is the first payment will be in October of this year, as opposed to waiting until next year. So we will be paying a little bit more debt in this calendar year than we had originally budgeted, but that also gets us there quicker by paying earlier.
Otherwise, we lose a year, actually. And we budgeted 300,000, I think, anyway, for the current debt.
Right,
so
but
it's
we
not
did
like
make a
it's-
payment right before this final term sheet was prepared as well, so
But it's not
there will be
gonna,
a double payment this year.
we don't have to in the future increase the budget amount, is what I was gonna say.
For the remaining 10 years, we will have a stable budget from the debt payment perspective relative to these facilities.
Questions? This kind of stuff can be kind of crazy to understand, but there's a lot of good information here.
So
Linda?
So I just want to be clear that we cannot pay off this debt until after 2030. That's
Correct.
correct, right? So it's
Correct.
just like any other, you put your money in and you sit till that 5 years is gone, and then you make a decision. Or you sit for 5 more.
Right, so essentially,
Okay.
and this is one of the reasons why the township's financial advisor thought this was the right route to go, as opposed to selling bonds out to the market. Because if we sold bonds out to the market, the township might get a slightly lower interest rate, but typically any deal that's 10 years or less would not be able to be called early and paid off. So you would be really stuck with that 10-year payment structure with no ability to pay it off early. So that's a typical market type of condition. But some of the benefits of going through the bank are, one, they waived any prepayments on the existing notes, and two, they're allowing the township to prepay this debt after 5 years,
And
to
so,
the extent it wants to.
so Incredible Bank is buying the bonds. Oh, okay.
That's the proposal, correct?
Okay,
Yep.
all right, I get it.
Yeah,
Yep.
and so that at the 5 years,
Yeah.
it's not coming due like a balloon would.
Oh, right, that was
We have
the-
the ability to refinance or not.
The balloon is a mistake for most people, a huge mistake.
Because then you're at the
Mercy of.
whatever the numbers are. too.
So this is no different than people buying bonds personally. We're just buying them as the township. So we're locking people into a 5-year commitment here, but we were locked into something else before.
It was a 7-year balloon.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Randy?
Yeah, so this is 10 years, fixed rate, fixed payments. So you know exactly what your payments are, all 10 years, right now.
Kind of like a
But
mortgage.
the township can, in its own option, prepay that after 5 years.
Yeah,
At no premium, so there's no penalty for prepaying either. It's whatever's outstanding, it's totally up to the township to make that determination. They don't need to get the bank's consent to do so, because they're already consenting to do it now. So it gives you the flexibility of, after 5 years, if you want to get rid of the debt, you can by paying it off early.
Okay, go ahead, Randy.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of the 2025 refunding bonds.
Support.
Okay. Any more questions that come up? Okay, roll call. Randy, please.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Treasurer Rickower.
Yes.
Trustee Winslow.
yes.
Trustee Kidda.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes.
Trustee Leighton.
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries 7-0.
So you have your work cut out for you tomorrow, Tom.
And we'll
But all right, we're excited about it.
we'll make sure the resolution gets signed and sent off to Brody.
Perfect.
Oh, everyone on that last email chain.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, have a nice evening. Thank you.
You too. Okay, another resolution authorizing the township membership in the West Michigan Health Insurance Pool. Mr. Kangas.
Well, we're already members of the pool because I have an insurance card in my pocket that says so. But they need this resolution adopted as kind of the last piece of paperwork to officially commit us to them. And you may recall, it's a 3-year commitment minimum, though they rarely lose members. And we're not locked into the current plan beyond this year. So if we don't like the rates at the end of this year for renewal next year, we could change the plan and still stay in the pool.
I move to authorize the resolution authorizing the township membership in the Western Michigan Health Insurance Pool.
I'll support that.
Okay, we have to put a number on this, haven't we?
Yeah, that'll be mine. It'll be 01-115 25-2, because the other one's -1. So I'll take care of that when I do them.
Okay. Questions of the manager? Okay, roll call, please.
Clerk Rattari, yes. Trustee Everson.
Yes?
Trustee Winslow.
Yes.
Trustee Kidda.
Yes.
Trustee Leighton.
Yes.
Treasurer Rickauer.
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant.
Yeah.
Motion carries 7-0.
Next up is to consider the service rates for our township council.
Can I lead in on that one?
Absolutely.
We don't know what the lump sum fee is on the bond council's services, but I'm pretty sure the hourly rate presented by your township attorney is far more competitive.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the attorney service rates for 2025 through 2027.
Support.
Questions?
It's a good deal, Roger, for your services, it's a great deal.
It is. We are blessed to have you. You've been awesome for the township.
And just hopefully you don't retire for many more years.
At least not this term, right? Just stick around for the four years anyway. Okay, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll note that I am starting the 32nd year of service for Marquette Township as of January 1. I started on January 1 of 1993.
Oh my goodness.
It was 12.
So you stuck around for the 30-year mark.
All right. Consider committee recommendations. I was able to corral a few folks to join us. We've got Jim Becker, who's the present alternate on the Zoning Board of Appeals, to step up and take that spot for a 3-year term till 2027. Leanne Kaczmarski is coming back to the Planning Commission after a bit of a family hiatus for a 3-year term through 27. And Paul Marin would like to come back for the library, the TAC. We did lose Tom Bronkin for other pursuits that he wanted to look at. So this is a 4-year term ending in 28. So I do have a handful of remaining open seats. The Board of Review alternate that does not really work very much. That's a 2-year term. There is training that's involved with that, and a stipend. And then we have 3 Downtown Development Authority seats for businesses, for people who own property in the DDA, for someone outside of the DDA that's a township resident. Give me a call. I did put the asterisk there that explains it a little bit. There's different criteria for how many members can be, what type of member on this particular board, authority board. And then a second liaison. We don't have to have 2 for the Peter White Library's TAC committee. We have had it in the last few years. It works out good because then you can alternate, but for right now, Paul would be our liaison and he'll take care of the reporting. But if somebody else would like to step up and do like every other month, it works pretty good. So these three are my recommendations for this meeting.
I'll support that.
Questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I'll put those oaths of office on a couple of them. Two of them, yeah. Okay, consider revision to Marquette Charter Township policies and procedure manuals. You might remember when we talked about the fire department manual, that Attorney Zappa made a recommendation that because we were making one change in the fire department manual's wording regarding this, that we should at least make a notation in the township manual so that they coincide and don't conflict, because the township manual will supersede anything that's in the fire manual if there's a conflict. So we didn't want to have a conflict. So I think I detailed it well enough that you can kind of see where the changes are. Roger, do you want to comment or?
No, that accurately sums it up. As indicated, and the differences in the firearms policy on fire department premises versus other township premises. And the township policy automatically supersedes the fire department policy. So you want to clarify in your township policy that it doesn't, that it doesn't apply. The firearms policy stated in the township policy does not apply to the fire department. That eliminates any conflict.
Because the fire department policy is more stringent.
Correct.
Especially. Questions?
Also move that, that gets amended.
Support.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay. Consider the request, and let's skip this one. Request the manager
We have
can
plenty
get-
of time.
Yes,
4
we do,
months.
but I'm glad you're on it.
That being said, there's a whole bunch of opportunity out there I'm passing up on, so
Mhm.
let's get this done.
He's got calls coming, so we want to lock him in. At least I do. It's up to the board.
So I'll move to accept the letter to request to renew negotiations from the township manager, which his contract expires December 31st of 2025. And I recommend that this clerk, supervisor, and treasurer be the negotiating parties.
Questions? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Who seconded that? Carl? Okay.
Thank you, by the way. And I will be strongly requesting another 5-year contract to stabilize my employment. Hopefully you all agree.
Okay, civic clerk.
Okay, so time has flown. Our 3-year agreement is up already since we started this. Because I looked back in my records and I couldn't believe that we did this in, was it 21? Started it in 21. And I can just tell you from my perspective, this has made the packets and very much more efficient flow out to the board and the public. And I would make a motion to renew the civic clerk software pending the legal review of the documents. I have to, Roger hasn't seen the review, so I'm going to have to send that to you to have you look at it before we sign it, but it should be like the other one, so. I made that motion to renew that. It's $4,098 a year.
I'll support that.
definitely echo that. The whole packet process was so involved with, using staff and making sure you got the document and you scanned it or you copied it. And this way we can I can start putting stuff in tomorrow and it'll be there. If I don't have the attachment, I can do it next week or whatever, and it's in there and it's done.
Well, what's nice,
John does,
yeah,
and
well-
Randy does,
well, what's nice about it is everyone that is in charge of putting the packet together can see it in real time. So I know if Lynn's put something on there, I know if the managers put something on there. And then for me, because the way we used to do it was all by Word document. The secretary put it together. Half the time I didn't know what was there. We didn't know what was there, and it was very kind of discombobulated because it just wasn't very efficient. That's why we went this route. And I think over the past few years, and it's very searchable. I searched something the other day and found it. And this is the basic package. We can get a fancier package that ties the video to the agendas, but Randy doesn't want to do all that work. So I think this is fine for now. So
Money well spent.
yeah,
So, and it's been budgeted.
it has, yeah. So
Yeah, and then actually initiating the packet is like a couple buttons for you.
yeah, I can, on a Friday afternoon, I can get here at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and by 4:30 I can have everything done and out, which is a lot more efficient than we used to do. It used to be a half a day project.
Those hours for you.
And I think just the amount of staff time it saved is paid for this product, so.
It's significantly increased the flexibility of when the last opportunity is to add something to the agenda. We could put it in there 5 minutes before he compiles it, and it knows exactly where you put it. There's no changing the agenda. It automatically does that for you. Very efficient. I think it's a great tool.
And I've kind of made it practice, if we can, not to add last minute things. A lot of the meetings I go to, they have a spot on there that says, late additions. And this really helps, even though it's Friday to Wednesday, it really helps us not have to do that. Unless it's something, legal or we need signatures or approval or whatever. Because I don't think that's fair to the board or the public. So I really try not to do that.
And if there's a change, and we only, like Lynn says, we only do anything if it's an emergency needed action item, because there's nothing more than I hate getting blindsided at the board table, so. So requiring to change it makes me do little bit more work, so, but it can be done. It just is a little bit more involved, but I think that's a good practice. We've been more transparent that way, because I don't like adding things at the board table if we don't have to, especially if it's not an emergency item.
Well, and if the public is interested and they look at the agenda and they say, well, there's nothing really here I'm interested in, and they don't come, or they don't watch, or they don't follow up, and then we stick something in, again, we try not to do that, but.
Yeah, and I've talked to folks, they know if I'm late. They know if I'm late, because they'll say, where's the agenda packet? And I'll say, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So people do look at it, and they do, and you can actually, I think you might be able to go on the website and subscribe. So if you get, when something's added, you can get an email on it, so. So anyway, I recommend renewing it, and we do have a second, so.
Any questions for Randy? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Oh, excuse me, thank you. Committee updates, well, we got planning. Anything on roads? No.
Nope,
I don't
roads
mean
is gone.
Didn't mean roads,
So-
I meant rec.
So I have a little bit that Jason was not at our meeting. So I just wanted to share that we had a public hearing on a proposed vehicle sales, service, repair, parts, and supply land use on some property off of US 41. And there were a couple things that needed to take place before it is totally approved. So I know the fire department needs to go and do an inspection, and so after those things have been taken care of, there were some concerned citizens in the audience. with some questions, and some of those weren't things that the planning commission was to deal with. So they were given suggestions as to where to go. I think that was kind of it. And Blight is moving ahead slowly, but we're getting there. And then the plan, which is quite exciting to see what it is that people really are focusing on. So,
Great.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. And the DDA met yesterday. Do you want to give a summary on that, John? It was not.
It
not
was
no
relatively
action items.
uneventful. First two items on the agenda were required by the bylaws, and that's to elect their officers and establish the calendar for the year that had been done previously, so that was kind of a rubber stamp reaffirmation of the schedule, and they meet the second Tuesday of each quarter, January, April, July, and October at 3 o'clock in the community room. So that's confirmed. It's already been published on the meeting calendar. We did talk about brief updates on the Renovari project with a little bit of discussion on that because it does get complicated with the residential TIF. Obviously, their funding stack is very fragile, complicated as well. Not something I would want to be spearheading, that's for sure. Did discuss briefly the Jacob Eddy Veteran Home, which, as Jason indicated earlier, we haven't seen a site plan yet, but we assume that they're still proceeding towards that goal with intention of breaking ground sometime this year. That's my expectation, but we haven't heard from them in a while. So their first order of priority was to receive approval to realign the west portion of Venture Drive so that they could fit their facility on the property that's currently split by Venture Drive. And the road commission has approved that with some requirements. You know, that responsibility is going to be completely on them. So we're not left with some bill that we weren't expecting, or the road commission. What else am I forgetting? We did talk about the proposed Cox Farm Trail a little bit. Oh, and some communications to property owners along the corridor. And we'll be sharing those with the road commission and MDOT for input before we send them out. Specifically, there's some stretches along the highway where there's a green strip between the pathway and the maintenance strip that's not consistently being maintained, and we think there's some confusion from some of the property owners that they shouldn't be going there when we believe that they are allowed to mow except for the median. So trying to clarify that for them to make sure that we get some consistency in the beautification of the corridor. And then what was the second one? It's been a long day.
Cox Farm.
Oh yeah, Cox Farm Trail. That would be most likely on private property, so seeking interest from the property owners whether or not they're willing to participate. So the challenge being access to some of the property owners along the corridor. So
It affects the Brookton Road property owners, so they know kind of where we're talking about.
oh yeah,
So I don't
It
know
would
where
be-
Cox Farm is.
it would be south of the businesses on the south side of the highway. Kind of parallel to Brookton Road on the back end of the commercial properties, so adjoining the residential properties on Brookton. And you can imagine there's probably going to be some controversy around that because not everyone would want a public pathway in their backyard. So hopefully we can find a reasonable solution there, just because some of these properties are just really difficult to access other than by automobile.
But if you don't ask the question, you don't know if it works, so
Right.
we're asking the question.
Yeah, and these conversations have been going on for quite some time. Probably longer than I've been here. And the challenge is the right-of-way doesn't have enough room to accommodate a non-motorized facility, especially on the south side of the highway. There's a maintenance strip there that gets used by pedestrians and bicycles and
Wheelchairs.
all kinds of modes of transportation, but it's not a designated non-motorized facility, so, and it's not the safest place to be. The busiest section of highway in the UP, outside of maybe I-75 and maybe even more traffic than I-75. I don't know what the numbers are, but it's a lot of cars per day.
30,000 a day. That's a lot of traffic.
Mhm.
And we did elect, or they elected officers. Rob Spen for chair, Frank Stabile was vice chair, and Dan Shanahan was secretary. For another year.
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Still 3 members short. People are leaving faster than they're coming.
Well, we've had a couple retire, so we're kind of stuck.
No
Okay.
more aging out.
Yeah. Any public comment? Okay, thank you. How about announcements? Anybody have anything to share? Randy?
Myself, trustee Leighton, and trustee Kidda, we attended a MTA training session last week in Harris Casino down there, and it was very enlightening again. It was more of a refresher for me, but for the 2 trustees, it was more training for what their roles are as a trustee and what you can and can't do, what you can and can't buy. And it was a great session again, and I had a few questions answered by the MTA. So it was good. I don't know if John or Carl want to chime in on the training, but I thought it was well.
I would agree with you, Randy. It was enlightening. MTA individuals, very knowledgeable, could address lots of issues and talked about lots of issues, keeping yourself out of trouble. That was, I think, bottom line message that I got.
Especially being new, that was probably really beneficial. What you can and can't do. So Carl's been at it this, a little bit. Did you learn?
It was very good. I mean, I understand now why Dan gets into so much trouble.
You can't use first names.
Was it just one big session, or did you do breakouts? Or?
Well, what they did is in the morning, they had like a general session, and then in the afternoons, we all broke out in the different offices. So they had like a supervisor, clerk, treasurer, trustee. And I'm happy to say that Marquette Township is pretty well run comparing to what I'm hearing, with others. So I think the public should be happy. We're on task and everything is well run here. So compared to some others that I hear about.
Yeah, some are scary. I'm just thinking.
I didn't hear any horror stories though, but I've heard with some of the questions I asked, I don't know if I'd be doing that.
What kind of crowd was it roughly?
I think they had about, 60 folks, 60 to 70 folks there. And then, of course, we all broke out in our different sessions, and they're gonna do some trainings. I got the border review training in February here. And I think they are gonna do probably some fall session, maybe a fall session here. And I think they're gonna have that MTA summit, which they do, it's like a 2-day thing.
Yeah.
And that'll be probably next year in the summer down at Escanaba. And then they talked about the annual conference coming up in, I think, April.
Grand Rapids?
Yeah, Grand Rapids. So,
So if you feel like you want to go to that, that's a week pretty much. Come back Thursday. Yeah.
yeah, you leave you can leave Monday, but it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then you usually come home Friday then, yeah.
Yeah, the issuing supervisor is Jim Nankervis. He's the chair of the County Township Association. So he sent an email out the other day, and I don't know if you're on that list or not, that, they'll have a van or a bus or something, depending on how many people are interested in going. So if you want to go in April, just make sure somebody knows.
Yeah,
Sign you up, get you a motel, and get you on that.
Yeah, as time gets closer, let Kim know, because the hotel thing is the most important thing to if you're gonna be there, to try to get you at the conference site, so you're not shuttling around.
And it's early. It's April 1st.
Yeah, it's early this year, so.
Mm-hmm.
And my reason for not being able to go these last couple of years has been, she's no longer here, so,
You lost your puppy?
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I will be able to go now.
So now you have no excuses.
And I made sure I told you, can't use that excuse.
Okay.
But I would encourage the I've been to one, it was in Traverse City, but I encourage the trustees or whoever on this board would like to go, because it's very interesting, enlightening. You talk to a lot of other folks, similar townships, you can network, you got a lot of questions and answers there. And it's a great educational venue.
It's very ostentatious too. I mean, there's a nice banquet, food is great. Some of the sessions, the breakout sessions are, have lunches with you if you sign up ahead of time. If they do go down on Sunday night, they have classes that are, $150 or something. Lots of times it's supervisor type stuff or treasurer. So you'd have to go down Sunday night, they'd start Monday morning, sometimes it's a half day or full day. There's such a variety. They usually have about 70 different classes you can break out to. And when we did it in the past, we'd kind of say, okay, I'm gonna go to fire, I'm gonna go to the parks thing, I'm gonna go, split it up so that when we came back and gave a report, then we could be more specific. We kind of covered the whole thing. Who's going to do this, who's going to do that. So that was helpful. It's helpful for the township to know that we are learning this stuff. And I make reference to a lot of the sessions I've been to, the things I've learned. That's what we're supposed to do. We got to follow the law. And like Randy said, we are one of the good ones. It's obvious. They tell us that. The instructors say, Marquette Township doesn't have any problems.
Well,
Heartwarming.
like in the clerk session, I was looking at a smaller general law township, but I said, so your supervisor and treasurer are doing this to you? They wouldn't be doing it here.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things that, they talked about was having, legal representation. We're very fortunate that we can have our attorney at the meetings with us, because it can, he can often intervene, answer questions, whatever. It's a huge help from having to backpedal and fix something that we did wrong.
It's easier for him too. That's when I asked him, if you consider this continuing. He said it is easier for him to know what's going on ahead of time, so that if he has to, we're the opposite. We call him because we don't want him to misstep. So he started coming, and the previous supervisor to me, we had some things going on, so he asked Roger to attend. And then when that supervisor left, I said, are you willing to stay? Because I think it's important, and the board at the time agreed, especially what the cost is. It's a few $1,000, well, depending on what he's working on, but
Keep us out of trouble.
It does, and I've told him numerous times, if you hear somebody start to say something, put your hand up, call my name, stop the conversation, because we do want to do what's right. So. Okay, anything else? And if you hear stuff at these conferences that we should be doing, or you've got ideas, feel free. Just because we put the agenda together doesn't mean you don't participate, If there's something you want to talk about, let us know. Something that comes up. Manager Kangas, what do you want to share?
I'm not sure I have anything else for you tonight. The big effort that we've been working on for a few months was the bond issue, and we've got a resolution to sign and get distributed tomorrow, and then the closing will be in February. And hopefully we'll be hearing back from the city at some point on that offer for the treatment plant partial purchase. I think that hopefully that will fall in line relatively well, along with the final study that Lenny's working on with Fishbeck for the Northwoods Pump House. So none of that is going to be cheap. Have to be aware of that. But we have agreed we won't ask to spend more than 10 million this year, just so you know.
Oh, and because of the bonding, yeah.
Yep. Treasurer's looking at me thinking 10 million's not enough.
I'll get you some interest. Make it work.
Okay, any questions for John? Okay, we can review the motions, please.
Yeah, the first motion was to approve the consent agenda as presented. That was approved. The second motion was to approve the regular agenda as presented. That was approved. Third motion was to approve the engagement letter with Miller Canfield. That was approved. The fourth motion was to approve the resolution authorizing issuance of the bonds. That was approved by roll call vote. And the fifth motion was to approve the resolution with the township membership in the Western Michigan Health Insurance Pool, and that was approved by roll call vote. Sixth motion was to approve the attorney service rates for 25 to 27. That was approved. Seventh motion was to approve the committee appointments from the supervisor. That was approved. Eighth motion was to approve the revision to the Charter Township Policies and Procedures Manual. That was approved. Ninth motion was to approve the manager's request for renegotiating his employment agreement. That was approved. And the 10th motion was to approve the civic clerk renewal pending legal review, and that was approved.
Okay, so we will talk about Rivari at the February 5th meeting. That's our next meeting. And I'm sure we'll find more things to bring to you.
Remember, it's 3 weeks before the next meeting. We have a 2-week hiatus here, so it's 3 weeks. February 5th is 3 weeks.
I think we have 3 5-week months this year, if I remember looking at it right. Anything else? Anything else? Any comments? Anything to share?
So I have a
Yeah,
couple things.
absolutely.
Our fire chief didn't mention this, but I think our fire department is 50 years old this year.
Oh.
So certainly something to celebrate. I don't know if they're celebrating, but our township should be celebrating that they've been around for 50 years to support our community. So maybe we can check with Dan and see what we can do. The other thing is, I was reading the minutes from the landfill group, and I asked Danny and John this, but on page 3 on the landfill schedule, it says that beverage containers are not to be thrown in the garbage. And if they are, our hauler can be charged more money for dumping his load. So he's only to have, I think it said 10 beverage containers. I don't know if people know that. I do know people throw beverage containers in the garbage. But maybe a reminder that they're recyclable, or they can bring them back.
I think all beverage containers are recyclable these days, except for maybe the waxed cardboard type containers. Obviously, if it's got the 10-cent refund on it, I think that's the language that's being referred to on that specific item on there. It's illegal to throw it away if it's got a 10-cent refund on it, but I would guess it still happens quite a bit. But why would you? It's 10 cents.
Because
and if it doesn't have a refund on it, you should be recycling it anyway.
Yeah.
Glass obviously has to be kept separate, so the wine bottles, the pickle jars, those you have to hang on to until the first Wednesday starting in April. And then we bring them up to North Country and there's a dumpster. Actually, they have a dumpster there all year for glass.
Yes, they do.
Now that I think about
I just took my
it.
stuff up a couple weeks ago, just loaded and just stop in the office, tell them you have something from Marquette Township, and she'll say, yep, I'll meet you back there. They open the garage door and they got things right there, dump them in, you go. So you can go anytime.
So you might just want to clarify that, Lynn, with your landfill group that you meet with, and make sure that's true, right? And then maybe an item on the back of one of our calendars.
Well, was Lenny gonna talk about that? Because I know he was in the email.
It was in the.
I think Lenny was done talking about it.
Yeah.
His research was The illegal part is anything that has a 10-cent refund.
Yeah, so, I mean, I hope our hauler isn't paying extra, and I don't know if it's
I'm
being
not aware of that
enforced.
being the case. I haven't heard of any
Yeah,
complaints.
but
from
they
them.
can,
Yeah, I think he would have.
said something.
Well, and some of that too, I questioned and I didn't get an answer yet. The things that they put in the fee schedule,
Oh,
they said they changed things. So I emailed back and said, can you give me a yellow highlight of what you changed? Because I said, I put those in the packets so the public knows, as well as the board. So they did, and some of the verbiage changed, and some of the rates went down. And I said, so when did this get approved by the board? And they said, it doesn't have to be approved by the board. And I said, you're changing rates, and you're changing the process of how you do things. You might want to check with your legal counsel. Didn't hear anything, so.
well,
But that's how that came
just a
up.
note
That
that,
was one of
that
the
was there,
items.
yeah.
And the other thing too, while we're on trash, pardon me, Randy, you should be getting some information from our hauler about the trash pickup. And is it February 1st or 5th?
Yeah,
I forget.
it's starting
The
in
first
February,
week-
yeah.
First pickup in February. For anybody that had pickup Thursday mornings and you were putting your trash out Wednesday nights, it's gonna be putting it out Monday night for Tuesday. So
Yeah,
that's
all
gonna
of
be-
Marquette Township.
Yeah, so
All of
everybody
Marquette
else, yeah, I
Township.
think it was split, the highway split, how it was picked up.
And that's what I was gonna say too.
Oh,
Re-
okay.
Yeah, just remember, put all of Marquette Township now puts their garbage out on Monday night,
Starting in February,
February.
Tuesday.
not until then.
Yeah.
Tuesday pickup.
And I did see some literature on that somewhere. I can't remember where, but
Yeah, there's been some public service announcements. They even paid for some advertising on TV6 because they've changed their haul schedules with a few of their municipal customers.
Yeah, Negaunee Township too, and I think, yeah, there were 3. Where did I see that?
I saw it somewhere. I can't
Yeah.
remember now where it was, but
Maybe, maybe.
And I think the city is going to,
bins.
It's changing, too.
yeah,
Getting rid of the bags.
yeah. So maybe that'll alleviate some people depositing bags in other people's bins. And the bins are supposed to close, okay, I still see people that their bins don't close, so reminders.
Okay, anything else to
On the
share?
glass, can you take any types of glass? I mean, I've got a couple pieces from a tabletop.
As far as I know.
I don't think so. I think
No?
it's just bottles.
No, I
It's
don't.
not light
What's
bulbs,
that?
No,
No?
no.
want glass, wait till April and put it in one of the dumpsters.
I can wait, yeah.
Okay.
Or just bring it down to Wiley's Glass and throw it in the dumpster.
You didn't say that, did you?
Not loud enough to be picked up, I don't think.
Oh, you never know.
It's everywhere.
Randy
Pretty
says-
sensitive. It's pretty sensitive.
Okay, good, I learned something. I haven't done that, but the person's right there when you drop it off anyway. If they wouldn't take it, they'd tell you.
Okay, well, I'll just wait till April. That's fine. It's not my way. It's just a thick piece of glass. I don't wanna get rid of it.
Okay, what else? Dan?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Support.
Good, I was gonna say, you didn't even give John a chance.
He's gotta be quicker than
I
that.
guess
I'm
so.
learning.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6:54, we are adjourned.